All right, ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome back once again to the only coast-to-coast radio show that's all about the information economy. It's time for Inside Analysis once again. Yours truly, Eric Kavanagh, here in San Diego at the TDWI conference where I used to work 20 years ago. Time flies when you're having fun, folks. And I'm very excited now to have Colin Dover with me. He is from SAP. That's how you call it. It's not SAP. Some people look at it and they say SAP. No, it's SAP. I talked to the Germans about it. They're very clear, SAP. And SAP, of course, is ERP. It's core business. But SAP has a whole host of technologies. And if I understand it correctly, Colin, you guys are getting into the data fabric business a bit too these days.
We are.
And of course, data and analytics. Tell me about the data story of SAP and where things are moving.
Yeah, so the data story, and firstly, thank you for having me this
Absolutely.
afternoon. Pleasure to be with you. So really, as you said, SAP has always been known historically for ERP, so 53-year-old company at this point. And you could say probably for the first 35 years of that, it was predominantly about enterprise resource planning.
Right.
Most people will know us for R3, ECC.
Right.
But about 15 years ago, we started to make significant inroads into the data and analytics space. A couple of acquisitions. Business Objects was probably the most notable at the time. First Logic. And then we brought a in-memory database to market, SAP HANA.
That's right.
Well, HANA that was for S4.
Okay.
So the vision for it was really about creating that in-memory compute environment that would allow for the overcoming of what we saw as a looming performance wall in the relational space, disk-based space.
Right.
So that was really, I would say, the first major step into that data and analytics world. So that combined with the capabilities that Business Objects gave us really was the starting point. And it's all been a rapid, I would say, progression from there. If you look at the last 15 years, HANA has just continued to grow in terms of its capabilities. We have a lot of customers running SAP BW, Business Warehouse. So that, that is the data warehousing environment for a lot of those organizations, in addition to the digital core in the form of S4 or ECC as was. But what we've done over the last few years is really gotten, as you indicated, into this notion of data fabrics. So a lot of discussion around data mesh, data fabrics. I've got customers who are talking about information tapestries. One even described an information American quilt because they're patching together multiple systems.
Wow.
But all joking aside, it really is for us about delivering a business data fabric which draws upon that 50 odd years of business know-how that spans pretty much every major industry on a global basis. We've over 400,000 customers. We've got an awful lot of not just mind share, but knowledge that we can bring to the conversation.
Wow.
And Business Data Cloud was really, as we launched it in February of this year, I would say the culmination of an awful lot of that effort in the data and analytics space, that knowledge coming into that discussion, into that solution, and formulating what we refer to as data products. Now, a lot of customers talk about data products. They have their own definition of it. We have our own very specific definition.
I'm curious to hear that.
Well, I'd say it's broader, and it's maybe more encompassing of everything from the data sets that you can connect to, the data sources you can connect to, the modeling that you can do with those data sources, the meta, the master data management, the governance, the cataloging, all of those things that are essential ingredients, if you like, of delivering a data product. But we bring those data products also into what we call the data package. And then from that data package, you have insights, application-based insights that you can consume through the analytics layer. So Business Data Cloud, as I mentioned, we launched February 13th, I believe, of this year. And the solutions that make up BDC, we actually had prior to BDC. So DataSphere we launched 2 years ago. And at the same time we launched DataSphere, we announced a number of strategic relationships with best-of-breed vendors, the likes of Calibra, DataRobot, Confluent, all to bolster our capabilities in what we would assume to be a disparate and heterogeneous environment that went beyond SAP.
Right.
And for a long time, many customers and the industry, I think, has assumed that we do a lot of SAP for SAP.
Right.
And DataSphere, in many ways, is proof positive that we do an awful lot of SAP for everybody else as well.
Interesting.
So bringing again that know-how, that intelligence, those capabilities into a heterogeneous landscape, which many of our, obviously all of our customers have.
Right.
But they're all pursuing the same objective and often face the same challenge, which is in that data disparity, you've got issues around governance, quality,
sovereignty.
Yeah.
This is a recurring theme we're seeing as well for GDPR, but not just, there's also CCPA. And someone told me there are 15 or 16 states in the union here in America that are considering laws.
Okay.
So now you've got this whole array of policy issues to deal with state to state. That requires a focus on data sovereignty, a focus on data governance, on policy management, right?
Yeah. And and data governance is something many organizations haven't quite managed to do as well as they would have liked to over the years.
Right.
And you look at an awful lot of I'll say any data product, any analytics initiative is often most vulnerable to the fact that data governance hasn't necessarily been done as comprehensively or as thoroughly as it needs to have been done. There's an awful lot of human ETL that goes on. We've got data movement, data duplication.
Human ETL, I got to write that down.
Replication.
That's funny.
And redundancy and overhead and risk that goes into the data management discipline collectively.
Right.
So, it's a significant enough challenge that increasingly, and as of last year, I think Goldman Sachs were one of the first companies to come out and say over 90% of their annual IT spend was going into data management. Wow. Broadly speaking.
Right.
Now, that covers an awful lot of things.
Right.
But you speak to any other organization here at the event this week, or in any other environment, and you're going to find an awful lot of technical debt, an awful lot of overhead, and sunk cost in data management practices. And so, as an industry that's really, I'd say, conditioned customers into thinking about moving data from one source to another source, copying it from here to there, managing in all of those places, SAP is really committed to helping you simplify the landscape, eliminate a lot of those costs, release yourself from that technical debt that's been built into every architecture, and meet the data where it sits, meet it where it exists, where it persists, and not require that you're constantly moving it from one place to the next to get value from it.
Well, can I just tell you, so DM Radio is our flagship show. It's in year 18. This show, InsideAnalysis, is in year 10 or 11, I think. In the earliest days of DM Radio, I'd already been in the industry about 7 or 8 years through a consultancy called Damon. They're basically a business intelligence data warehousing company, a lot of ETL. And I just started wrapping my head around all these batch windows and moving data around and around and around and around, like musical chairs or something, and then one chair gets pulled away and, oh, we missed the batch window.
Right.
And I thought to myself, this madness has got to stop. This is crazy, because for lots of different reasons. One, it's expensive. Two, it's time intensive. Three, it's brittle. Whenever you move data, you risk the chance of truncating fields, of having errors, of corrupting files. It adds an element of complexity. And then what happens is all these business folks over the years figured out, hey, data warehouse is pretty cool, let's get our data in there. So now you've got all these teams vying for their batch windows, and it's just data engineers are pulling their hair out. Right. But to your point, if you can simplify and see, it's cool to be with a company like SAP because you have core business. You have a center of gravity. You are a center of gravity for companies. So you can solve those problems at a deeper level, and I'm guessing that's what Business Data Cloud is about, right?
Yeah, and so just to pick up on a few of the points you made there, the first of which is I can't remember a time when I could pull my hair out, but
I'm with you, buddy.
But everything you just described there is a very common challenge to most organizations, and the thing that it is standing in the way of singularly, or that entire described problem, is effective deployment or adoption of, or even exploration of meaningful business AI. And so BDC, in many ways, is our proof positive of the fact that you have to have the data in order. We've got to get that right. That's a foundational requirement. So the creation of a data fabric is partly about saying, let's create the connections. let's define the pipelines, let's orchestrate those, let's do all of the essential, let's say, maintenance and administration of how you get to the data. But then create those reassurances that once I've got the data or I've got access to the data, whatever I'm going to do with it, whether it's analytics in the form of a productized data set that's part of a package of data that is being consumed through an analytics interface, SAC in this case, which is another solution that makes up BDC, that is happening with readiness for consumption or integration or interaction with an AI experience, whether that's naturally driven or through natural language prompting, or any other method, and setting you up for agentic business AI that is really adding value to that data experience. Now, is it fully removing the human from the loop? No, the expectation is it's supplementing or it's complementing what we can bring in terms of the human intelligence to the thought process, to the question in question. But it's removing or eliminating or reducing all of that mundane work and the heavy lifting behind the scenes of getting the data ready for that questioning. That's really at the core of BDC. So we came out last year, our CEO came out on stage at an event, I think early spring of last year, and said, SAP's philosophy is, without good data, there's no AI.
That's right.
So we're very focused on data. BDC is really the manifestation of not just that statement, but the vision. And just maybe of interest to some of the listeners, if you have SAP Business Warehouse, BW, as it's more commonly known, BDC allows you to extract all of the value, the investment that you've put into that environment, productize it in association with or in conjunction with all of those other data sources that I mentioned you may have. And through that productized approach to BW, you're getting extended value, increased value, and value out of an environment that for many customers they thought years ago they were probably going to be asked to leave it behind or leave it by the wayside.
Well, there is tremendous value in historical data. And one of the mantras we've been talking about on the show for the last few years is get your data house in order. Because if you don't know what information access you have, if you don't really have a good understanding of that information landscape, you're going to be in trouble if you start pointing AI algorithms at it, because you're going to get very bad results. I mean, it's amplifying the results basically. So battening down the hatches, tightening the screws on data governance, really understanding from a discovery perspective what you've got. These are all very, very important facets. And you mentioned something else I think that's interesting is data products. And I think that, I've been around 25 years in this business, that represents a major shift and inflection point in this industry, because all of a sudden we're not thinking so much about speeds and feeds and technologies, but no, the product itself, which is built of the data, and then what you want to have are robust, proven, certified data products that can then be connected like Legos. So you're not just doing all this point-to-point ETL in the background, which is a spaghetti nightmare, which is expensive, and it's just very, very difficult to maintain, right?
Yeah, well, and I mean, you're describing the challenge again perfectly. Because all of those things that are essential to a data product require, amongst other things, tremendous confidence in the quality of the data. You know, and a lot of customers I work with, trust in data is almost an organizational capability. It's some can and many are unable to. And if you're going to productize any of your data, your trust in it has to be incredibly high. So that's why we are committed to delivering the data products for the customer. We're using all of our know-how. And essentially making those data products available in what we call the BDC cockpit. So you can browse through all of the available data products that are predefined mappings, predefined definitions, curated data sets that allow you to simply install the product, install the associated package, which is sort of the next level aggregation of those products. And then, if you want to customize those, the relationship we entered into this year with the BDC launch, something that we're very excited about, is our OEM relationship with Databricks, which allows us to perform data engineering, extend those artificial intelligence, machine learning based capabilities, do that over in Databricks. So take a data product, enhance it, extend it, manipulate it or modify it for my particular needs.
Right.
Then put it back in the BDC environment.
Interesting.
And that is, something that a lot of our customers are very excited about. I was just having a conversation with one about an hour ago here. Incredibly excited about that culmination of everything we're doing in the portfolio, plus then opening it all up to the third-party landscape, and making that something that's bi-directional, without requiring copious amounts of data to be copied, moved, or
no, that's right.
in any way.
I have to say, when I heard the announcement, I thought that's quite a coup for Databricks. Yeah. Because again, SAP runs core business.
Yes.
And if you want to understand your processes, your supply chain, your procurement, through Fieldglass, your people, you have all of these core components. That is the jet fuel that can create very powerful AI applications, is the key. But you have to make sure that you get it right. And that's a governance question, it's a process question, it's rudimentary stuff, but as I love cliches, well begun is half done, right?
To quote Mary Poppins. Yeah. So
I didn't know that was her.
It is indeed.
There you go.
So anyway, I love that. And you reminded me of something else, the analogy there of jet fuel. I was in a session yesterday, and somebody talked about data being the new oil. Now, data being the new oil was something I first heard maybe 10 to
at least 10
15 years ago, somewhere in that range. Yeah?
Right.
I think Clive Humby said it
Look at you
around
go.
2006.
Wow.
And we've been talking about it being the new oil ever since. I actually had one CIO describe it as the new bacon, because everybody likes it. They just want it done in a different way.
That's funny.
And that is the reality of data in a lot of places. But your reference to jet fuel really gets very much to the heart of what we see in BDC with those data products. That it's time to stop looking at oil as this, or data as this unrefined oil product.
Right.
It needs to be refined to the point where it's jet fuel.
That's right.
And it really is fueling the business engines.
That's right.
In every corporation. And so I think that's really where BDC is taking us.
That's impressive.
And that's that's the focus.
This is good stuff. SAP got the AI religion, folks. They have the data religion, business data cloud, very good stuff. Look this gentleman up online, Colin Dover of SAP. We'll be right back. You're listening to Inside Analysis. All right, folks, back here on Inside Analysis at TDWI in San Diego with Sean Knapp from Ascend. I've known this gentleman for a number of years now, doing some very interesting stuff, declarative pipelines. Before I heard anyone else talk about that, he was talking about declarative pipelines. Guess what they're working on these days, folks? Agents, AI agents and agentic architecture and context. Things like context really matter. And I talked earlier today with one of the guests and I said, we believe that language and text is so easy to understand, but that's only because there's so much context in our brains that makes sense of small little bits and pieces of information. An agent, what does an agent have? It has to have access to information. It needs context in order to know what to do when. And you folks are now, I didn't know this until I guess yesterday, you talked about it and today a bit more. You're actually enabling the building of agents on your platform, right?
We are.
Let's talk about that in one of these pillars of agentic development.
Yeah, so when we look at really the most interesting and most powerful agents, they really have three fundamental pillars. First, they need a tremendous amount of context. Second, they need the ability to take action. And then third, they need the ability to be properly invoked, to trigger.
Right.
So if I double click on each one of those quickly, context is things like the entire Git history of the code and the version of the code that's running today, who changed it, why they changed it, its runtime history, it's all the things that we would, as a developer, go grind our way through reading screens and screens of information. Agents need that kind of context too. The second, the ability to take action, usually this starts to look like things like MCP servers, where I'll give you a great example. I have a data pipeline, it breaks in the middle of the night at 3 a.m. And that would be actually the third part, the trigger, something broke. Now I'll get more to that in a second. But the context is, hey, I need the ability to go back and look at who made this change, when was it deployed, what's the run performance beforehand. The action may then be, hey, I actually need to go create a GitHub issue. So I need to go talk to a different system. And I want to put the entire set of information around triaging into that GitHub issue. And then after I create that, I want to go hit PagerDuty and create an incident that pages somebody and provide the information from the GitHub issue into the PagerDuty alert, so that gets escalated. And then maybe even I want to send a message into a Slack channel and mention a couple of other people and have that be the entire process.
Right.
And all of those are actions.
Right.
Talking to 3 or 4 different systems that can all be taken via MCP servers now. And then really that third part that we talk about, after context and the ability to take action, is triggers. Like we as humans are really used to interacting with ChatGPT or Claude and others, where the primary trigger is I send a message.
Right.
But that can be wildly generalized to API calls, system events, and one of the really exciting parts and really powerful features we added to the Ascend platform was an entire automation and eventing framework where every single event inside of the system can now be a trigger. It can be a trigger for a lot of things, but for the purpose of this conversation, it could be a trigger for an AI agent. And so when we combine those 3 things, I can trigger on system events, on failures, on successes, on user activity. I have a world of context and information available to me. And then I can take tremendously powerful actions on top of that. It's really those 3 pillars that create this really compelling agentic experience.
That's wild.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is, it's amazing. That one of the things I've heard, and we talked about this yesterday, is there's a school of thought that says, make your agents very, very focused. And there's a school of thought that says, no, focus on the super agents. And there's also having a sort of orchestrating agent and with other little sub-agents. I mean, there are lots of different ways you can do these things. What's your take on that? Are you a super agent guy? Are you an orchestrator guy? What do you think about that?
Yeah, and I'll probably sound a little Goldilocks on this one. But so we started, so we first started, not even super agent, I would just call it like meh agent way back in the day. But it was an agent, so it was
write
cool.
That down, meh agent.
The meh agent, you got to start somewhere. So we started with that. Then really where we ended up going is we went after sort of the micro agent model. That first we tried to have the dispatch agent that would coordinate among the micro agents, and then we tried to have the micro agents kind of hand off to each other, and trying to figure out how that worked. We found we were actually far more able to write a really compelling product experience by moving really to this super agent architecture.
Interesting.
And gosh, this is probably like 9 months ago or something.
All right.
We ditched our micro agent model.
Wow.
And we found like okay performance and experiences, but just nothing that would delight.
Right.
Truly delight. And so what we ended up finding with the super agent model was which I think a lot of other tools and platforms in the space have moved towards to a bit, and then now I think they're shifting back. But if you look at like a Cursor, a Claude Code, they start to do similar kinds of behaviors, which is what we find is most LLMs, if you try and give it all the rules and all the context for all the things it could do, they really struggle.
Right.
But in many ways, kind of like Neo and the first Matrix, right, where you're downloading skill sets. This notion of rules has been introduced, where in our system we provide a bunch of sort of environmental data engineering specific rules that are highly contextual to how you write data systems, how you interact with Snowflake or Databricks or Google BigQuery or our external systems. And,
right.
Rules around like, hey, how do you troubleshoot and triage data pipelines and integrations? And what these super agents are able to do is download those rules. And we've applied a bunch of layers where rules can be decided. You can decide, hey, I always want this rule to be included, or maybe I only want this rule to be included when these certain keywords, these other certain parameters, or contextual things.
Right. So you're balancing a rules-based system with a more dynamic system, basically. So you're trying to get the best of both worlds, right?
Exactly, and that lets you inject a lot of this context.
Interesting.
Yeah, and so what we end up seeing then is, and this was one of the really exciting things we added into the product too, users can create their own rules.
Right.
And they can apply that same heuristic where they can inject it, the model can pull it in,
right,
and it gives them a huge amount of flexibility to
Interesting.
really customize that experience.
Interesting. So, I mean, rules have been around for years and years and years, rules-based systems, and they reach their limits, and that's when you have problems with them. Are you able to incorporate some of the rules that maybe policies that companies have already developed, or how does that work? Can you import basically from a rules engine to your agentic framework and then carry over a lot of that learning? Because it's like you want to benefit from what you've already built.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah, and this is actually, I think a really interesting domain where, for the Ascend platform, we come out of the box with a lot of default behaviors and agents and rules, things that we just know are good practices. But most enterprises have invested in these things for years. Mm-hmm. And the ability to take that and import those as really, the heuristics are fairly straightforward around, this rule has certain, as long as you can put it in natural language or something an LLM can understand.
Right.
How you define rules in the Ascend platform is literally a markdown file with a couple of tags that say, I always want this included, or include it when these keywords or these kinds of files are open. Or you can just give it a really big description and say, here's a description, let the model decide when it needs to download this rule or not.
Right.
And that's where we found just such incredible performance and behaviors that's pretty mind-blowing.
Wow.
And kind of related to what we were talking about too is, now what we see is where a lot of data engineering teams have been trying to force so many constraints into the platform to help protect against bad behavior or bad code or bad systems.
Right.
We're finding data platform, data architecture teams now are turning their attention to, let me just write the rules and the heuristics that steers the behaviors into the right model so that you can catch things even earlier on in the development process and guide the, oftentimes the citizen developers, the people who work further downstream, and provide the right guidance as they're working upstream and self-serving higher up in the data lifecycle.
Well, and so here's the fun, exciting part about all this is that there are so many different ways you can inject this capability, including data management. And let's face it, data management has a whole lot of really tedious stuff that nobody enjoys doing. And if you can get agents trained to do simple things, data quality checks, pipeline awareness, did a pipeline break, like you talked about these triggers. So what's your take on data teams really starting to leverage AI in their workflows, like the cobbler's children having shoes kind of thing?
Exactly, it is like that old saying where the cobbler's kids have no shoes, right? Where, and it's, especially when we're here at a conference like this, data teams have been these like tremendous pioneers in some of the most complex use cases and solving really hard problems, oftentimes pioneering what we're doing in machine learning. Yet when we talk to teams here, the percentage of people who are actively using AI on a regular basis is far lower than what we see from software engineering teams, from marketing teams, from support teams, from sales teams.
Right.
And so it is very much this, I think data teams are so bogged down, and frankly, I think applying AI to data, not the data itself, but to the practice of the processes around data, I think applying AI to that is harder, and as a result, we just haven't seen as pervasive and widely adopted technologies as like a cursor or software engineering.
Right.
And I think we're going to see that, but there's this huge opportunity to greatly expand and increase the overall productivity of the data teams and get them to start writing more agents. And I should preface too, writing agents isn't supposed to be hard.
Right.
Like we see on our platform, within an hour you can craft an agent, give it all of their appropriate instructions, get that thing deployed, hook it up to some MCP servers, and you're off and running with an agent that can take action for you.
Right.
And you're just doing it with natural language.
Right.
And so this isn't supposed to be a month-long engagement to do an agent thing. This should be a day's exploration, if you will.
Well, and I mean, it's really a multi-level automation construct is what it boils down to, right? And you want to enable them to do certain things in certain environments and act when there's a trigger, and then be able to monitor all that. So that to me is like the big question is, how are you monitoring these things? How do you stop bad behavior? How do you identify bad behavior? And you talk too about the handoffs, and those are difficult as well. So how are you monitoring these things, and how can the user monitor and course correct?
Yeah, really good question. So that's also part of what we've invested a lot in what we call our third generation architecture of our platform, which is a really deep observability stack. Everything that happens in the system, you still have to log, whether it's agentic action, whether it's a user action, whether it's the system processing data.
Right.
And so we take all of that information, we store it in the underlying data warehouse, like a Snowflake or wherever we're running, and we expose that inside of the product itself to users. So you can see, hey, this automation ran and triggered this AI thing, and it was running in my staging deployment on this project that was running this version of code that was built at this time and triggered by these parameters.
Right.
And you can get all of that information with a click of a button.
Right. So do you have, like, one of the techniques is to have a QA agent that literally sits there and checks things, and so you go through the process and the QA agent comes in and goes, hey, did it all work out? Do you guys do stuff like that?
Yeah, we end up seeing a lot of those oftentimes in the QA agent, even in the development lifecycle itself. And so even having the QA agent either deployed into your staging or your continuous CI/CD process, and your sort of earlier on before you hit staging and production. But we also have a bunch of agentic capabilities and agents that run as co-pilot agents for you as well. So we see a lot of when you're developing, for example, like let's take I'm writing SQL and I'm analyzing some data set tied to sales forecasts. Agents can actually do really powerful things like, hey, looking at this code, you don't have a coalesce function running, and you're probably assuming that all of the input values to this field are non-null. Maybe we should go put a non-null check on the upstream data or on the inputs, so that we're not introducing potential bugs that could create all sorts of downstream issues.
Wow.
And so that's where we start to see a lot of these kind of common pitfalls. If I can just create enough of these agents and really invoke them in the right ways, having them working in the background or even the foreground is just radically transforming how data engineering happens.
Well, and we've got about a minute left here. I love that you're really experimenting, because that's the key to success right now, is experiment, because this is all very, very new.
Yeah.
So you have to put it like in your dev environment or wherever and test and feel and understand how it's working. And then once you figure it out, cement it, engineer it, right?
Exactly.
What did Mark Madsen say? You're not going to vibe code your way out of doing data engineering, right?
Exactly.
But final thoughts from you.
Yeah, I mean, I think you highlight something really important, which is, hey, look, like this is changing very quickly.
Right.
It's the things we do today probably are going to be irrelevant in 18 months.
Right.
But I think the most important thing is not to sit back and see where the dust settles, because it's just going to be new dust.
Right.
It's far more important.
New dust.
It's far more important
That's
to
fun.
get in there, because we're building not just incredible product and getting lift for our teams, but we're also building just an inherent intuition as to how these agentic systems work, which is critically important for the teams.
That's awesome. Well, folks, we'll be right back. You're listening to Inside Analysis. Look this guy up, Sean Knapp of Ascend. We'll be right back. Folks, back here on Inside Analysis at TDWI in San Diego, and next up I've got Josiah Vincent from Fivetran. I've known Fivetran for, about 10 years or so, and they just came out of the gates running with some very cool technology for pulling in all kinds of data. So Josiah, you guys are really good at pulling in lots of disparate data and helping to build solutions. Tell us a bit about what you guys are working on now.
Absolutely. So Fivetran, as our vision, is to move data like electricity. So as simple and easy as that. You should be able to flip a switch and get your data. So we've been working on ways to do that at the larger level, right? We're talking about big scales of data, a lot more power in databases. A few years back, we acquired HVR. So that's the high volume replication tool to get the best in technology to pipe data from databases such as SAP, such as Oracle, SQL Server, and we are improving our capabilities to do so. So we're actually moving towards an agentless model to be able to get data out of the log files and do the lightest weight replication we can for databases. As well as working with reverse ETL. So the concept of bringing data back into your applications such as Salesforce and other tools. So we acquired Census back in May. So there's a lot going on here at Fivetran, and we're glad to be able to talk about it.
Well, that is cool, and so you're all about kind of bringing it all together, because one data set by itself only has so much value. The real value accrues when you can align multiple data sets, and the fact is all these different systems, you think like software as a service, look at the number of companies in the data and analytics space these days that are software as a service. There are thousands of them.
Tons.
Thousands. Like in the MarTech space, they all have their own data models, their own APIs, their own custom objects, their own way of doing things. That is very, very confusing.
Absolutely.
And I think Fivetran kind of serves as the unifier, or the you used a better word for it, aggregator basically of all these different data sets to where you can make some sense of them, right?
Absolutely. Centralizing your data is key, especially in this modern era of AI. We need to have all of that centralized and pulled together. And even with Fivetran, we have 700 plus sources. In our research of how many possible APIs we could get to be able to pull into Fivetran, we're talking about millions of tools, millions of open access points for APIs. So we've recently, and I demoed it earlier today, we recently launched the Connector SDK.
All right.
So anything you can do with connecting to a data set, you can now do with Python using Fivetran.
Wow.
So that front half, you'll write your code, pull the data in, and then you feed it to Fivetran from there. So we handle all the loading, we handle scheduling, we handle alerting. All of that is built into our normal platform, except you just decided, hey, I want to pull data from here.
Right.
Double that down with your internal APIs for your own company. You can use the code to pull data through your organization using our hybrid model, and it's just, now we're really cooking.
Wow, that's impressive. And you've also focused on reliability. I mean, let's face it, one of the real stickers of this whole industry with data pipelines is that they break.
Yes.
And they break in the middle of the night, and they break in the middle of the day, and they break all the time, and then you wind up doing troubleshooting, and that just slows everything down. It's also demoralizing.
Oh, it hurts.
You know, I think that, I've said many times in this show, the most important aspect or characteristic of any business is morale.
Yeah.
Because when morale is high, good things happen. You can have all the money in the world, all the best resources, but if morale is low, good things are not going to happen, and broken pipelines break morale.
100%.
Right? So
Yeah,
what do you do to make them more reliable?
Yeah, so at Fivetran, and speaking personally, right, I was a data engineer for 10 years, and I've fixed more pipelines than I care to admit. I've been up at 3 in the morning, and it does not feel great. I've left organizations purely because we didn't have a plan about how we're going to solve this.
Right.
And in that way, Fivetran's prioritized that. Just at the top of our list, security, of course. You can't move data at all unless we're secure. So we have the best in breed for security, absolutely operate at the highest levels there. And the next one is our 3 nines of reliable pipelines.
All right.
So we have 3 nines, 99.9% uptime. And then within that, you'll see situations where we could heal it. We could fix this, right? So there's an API outage. Just wait for the retries. Don't break your pipeline. Maybe don't even send a warning, right? If it's an API rate limit, we don't need to send you a warning. We know that we hit the rate limit. We know when the limit resets, and we're just going to wait till that time and then kick it back off. So that should be a no-brainer for these ones you can handle.
Right.
And then things pop up too, where somebody changed a password, somebody changed your permissions on your database or on your API. We're going to alert you right away. We'll say, hey, we got this permission change. We'll send you the alert and say, hey, fix this. If it's something we don't know what the error is, it might wait, we might do retries, and after 24 hours, we'll create a ticket on our side to ask you to help us investigate and figure out what's going on. So our support team is on top of it. By the way, the best support teams I've ever worked with have been at Fivetran.
Wow. And that's so important too, because when there's trouble, everyone knows there's going to be trouble. Everyone knows stuff breaks. But if there's someone on the other end of the phone who is there and works with you, that is huge for customer experience. That's huge for loyalty.
Absolutely.
Because when people don't get that kind of service, that's when they leave.
Yeah.
Right? They're like, all right, I'm out.
Yep.
I'm going a different direction.
Haven't heard from you guys in 2 months, made a ticket, like where are you? You know, like
Oh,
what are we
that's
doing
just
here?
brutal.
I've seen it.
That's brutal.
Yeah.
Well, and so, I mean, let's talk about access too. So everybody now understands the value of data and they want to get more data in. But look, what about machines? What about AI? Like, what role is AI playing in your roadmap now? And how big of a magnetic pull does it have for the energy, the electricity that you talk about?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, we're operating in the cloud, right? So all of our data is being processed. All of your data movement is happening in one of the 3 clouds that you've chosen, unless you've deployed as hybrid on-premise.
Okay.
In any of those situations, we're trying to get as much data as possible into one place. We all know AI, ML, thirsty.
Right.
They're data thirsty. You can almost never. There's almost no upper limit for it. But once it gets there, how do we make that happen from then?
Right.
So we're definitely operated in the same way we've always been, even in the AI push. Build that bronze layer. Get all your data centralized. But once it's there, we have some DBT packages out of the box to automatically turn those into vectorizations, automatically prep those to be able to be fed into your AI.
Wow.
We work with DBT to do this, and that's our open source tool that we like to kind of stage into the rest of it. but then we got to go to the next limit, right? Unstructured data, getting into files, getting files, videos, all these things moved across. We are also designing that. So we have in private preview right now, moving that into unstructured file systems into Snowflake.
Wow.
It's just our first one. We have many partners, but Snowflake just happens to be the first one for this push. It's going to change the way we think about data centralization.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty wild. And of course, the ability to move what you want when you want, that is so crucial for keeping morale high and keeping ideas flowing. Because there's this real opportunity cost when you don't have that easy access to information. You just stop thinking about cool ideas. You just basically start patching the Band-Aids, I got to get through another day and then get home at the end of the day. That's not the attitude that you want from your data team.
And there's a lot of things that go into consideration with that when it comes to folks just want to do their jobs. Data engineers also just want to do their jobs. And when you've pulled in all this data, you've pulled in all these pieces, and everybody's like, well, that would only be useful if you also had the CPS database in there. I can't connect the dots without that one. And you're like, well, how do we get that? And then there's 3 months of access conversations internally. Folks are saying, well, you can't use it for that, you can't use it for this. And it's like, these conversations could be much easier. Let's centralize it and then make decisions from there.
Right.
So I actually work with a major financial organization that has a data hub established. They said, centralize it all, and then once it's landed into the staging layer, people can do analysis and make decisions on, well, this is allowed in the data hub. By the way, this is a PCI DSS compliant organization.
Right.
They say these ones can go be exposed in PCI DSS, these ones cannot. And they go through that. So the first step is really get it there and then do your analysis. We don't need to silo out all of these decisions. We need a centralized effort, a concerted effort to be able to create solutions in our organizations, and let's not step on our own feet to do it.
Well, yeah, that's very interesting too, because you think about the focus of centralization. That's where data warehousing came from. Let's pull data out of enterprise resource systems, ERP, clickstream analysis, web trends, whatever it was, model it, put it into a data warehouse. But you're taking the same approach, but it's a bit simpler. You're taking data of all different types, putting it into a centralized location so that it can then be easily validated, ported into other systems. You've got basically a marshalling area for data.
100%,
Right.
and it fits entirely with the data lake design, which is one of our offerings now. We have a managed data lake. We're the only ones in the market for what we do
Really?
that allow. Yep, we create an ACID compliant managed data lake, fully managed, and it's all Iceberg and Delta table.
All right.
So you have those manifest files sitting there, but everything else is Parquet files under the hood. Long ago, I built some data lake solutions where we had to hand stitch together all the Parquet files. Deduplication was a nightmare.
Oh.
Nope, Fivetran figured it out. There is sometimes a right way to do things, and you just got to do it right and rely on someone who's figured it out.
That is very interesting. So what are the types of data that you see that are most commonly used for your clients? I mean, you mentioned financial services, but like we talked about all these marketing technologies too, like literally thousands of them.
Yes.
Is that a big center of gravity as well?
Marketing is huge. I mean, in part because of the data access. There's been a big push for using data in marketing because of our Googles, because of these organizations that have done the aggregation. The data source exists out there, and I would say of all of our connectors, the ones that deliver the largest set of data is the Google connectors.
Is it really?
Right. Outside of databases, of course. Anybody's home databases could pipe a lot. SAP, for instance, massive. But those would be the biggest. Those would be the biggest feeders. And then the most common ones, Salesforce. Salesforce is ubiquitous everywhere, so we see a ton of that out there. That was our first connector.
Wow.
So we've done a lot of work on there. We have the most robust connector, thousands and thousands of data objects piped through that every day.
Wow.
We also we're processing petabytes of data every month. So an incredible amount of data processing to be done.
That's awesome. Well, folks, podcast bonus segment is coming up next year. If you want to be on the show, send me an email, info@InsideAnalysis.com. We'll be right back. You're listening to Inside Analysis. All right, folks, back here on Inside Analysis, yours truly, Eric Kavanagh, here with Josiah Vincent of Fivetran. We're talking about centralized data. And you know, Josiah, one of the things that I've learned is if your data engineers are blocking and tackling all day, putting Band-Aids on data pipelines, that's a reactive mode. You're reactive. You are not generating new business value. You're just keeping the lights on and just keeping the pipes running. That is not a positive environment. And again, it breaks morale. So the key is how do you accelerate the value? And you've talked a little bit about that with durability, reliability, focusing on understanding the profile of things that go wrong, identifying them and auto-fixing them, and knowing when you have to send an alert versus when you have to do some automation or whatever. But talk a little bit about greasing the tracks to AI applications, to leveraging all this data for the AI app.
Oh, I'm happy to talk about that. In my experience, we should not have to spend our time on the data engineering pipelines as much as the actual data engineering.
Right.
How do we design features that are going to move the business?
Wow.
So with Fivetran, you freed up all that time.
Right.
You now have a tremendous amount of time to be able to invest in the feature engineering and the getting the right report elements created, and that big focus allows us to drive together towards it. So we said, hey, let's double down with that. Let's work with our teams. Let's help provide this. We've long provided DBT packages that'll help you with marketing, with Salesforce, with other tools out there, and automatically team in some transformations.
Right.
So create some downstream silver layer stuff. And so doing that same effort for AI, absolutely we came out the gate with it. So we actually built our own internal chatbot, and in doing so, we said, hey, how do we make this robust and shareable?
Right.
And so we created the DBT packages that'll allow you to pull in that data, put it into a vector database, and instantly
Wow.
feed your AM models.
Right.
We've even got it to the point where we said, hey, now that we've done this, what else can we feed our chatbot? What else can we feed it to tell us back how to do our own jobs?
Wow.
So we actually have the power with the connector SDK, which I talked a little bit about with the Python. We actually have the power to build Python connectors with just a prompt.
Wow. That's
So we're doing
cool.
that. We have our team's using Codex. I have an example demo you guys can find online. We also have online an open repository of our examples.
All right.
So you can build your own connector SDKs there. And one of those example sets has literally, hey, here's the system prompt.
Right.
Here's the user prompt, and it will just build you a connector in
Wow.
Fivetran. It's fantastic. It's what we should be doing.
Well, and so they're like Lego pieces, right? And if you build these connectors right, because the time to excitement is very important. And you don't want to have to be climbing up the mountain to get finally breathless to that time of excitement.
Yeah.
And that's what you're talking about, is being able to connect it very quickly, say, I want to test some theory, I want to see what happens if I vectorize this data, how does that affect the reliability of the answers, how does that affect the accuracy of the answers? To be able to do that quickly is huge. Because like if you think about the business, and this is why we talk for years and years, I've been talking about this stuff, if you disrupt the thought process, you've disrupted creativity.
100%.
You just put a roadblock in the way of the next big thing for your organization, and you don't want to do that.
Yep.
So if you have the connectors, if you have the data centralized, and then you can start focusing on, well, what do you want to do? How can you be benefiting from these kinds of things? That's the conversation you want to be having. And I tell you, once people get that instant gratification, they want more. And they want to do the next thing and the next thing, right?
Yep, that's right, Eric. I love the emphasis of all we're talking about, Eric, is because this is a quality of life
Right.
conversation, a quality of work life.
Right.
And being able to create solutions. I mean, when I was data engineering, I love, say what you will, Jira and ticket management, all that stuff. I loved it. I loved
That's
seeing a little
adorable.
task list sitting there for me and saying, hey, can you check the box? And I checked that box, I'm like, did it. I did that. Look at what I did today. Not for my manager or anybody else out there, but for me to look back and be like, I had a good day.
Right.
I had a great day. The day that's not like that is the one where I sat there, or we woke up early, had to deal with something, and there's no checkbox there.
Right.
The box was just, it didn't break today. That should not be a view of my success of the world, right?
It did not break today.
Right?
Well, and like it gets back to getting into a rhythm of doing things. And it basically when you have pipelines that break, it's like getting knocked off your horse,
100.
if you're riding. And it's like it takes time to get back up. One of my developer friends, who is a data engineer too, he always jokes that, you put the headphones on, you're about to go in and do your thing, and someone taps you on the shoulder, hey, can you tell me about such and such? And you're like,
Got to get into the flow.
I was trying to get there and you just stopped me. And so you have to know what that flow is and enable that. And that's what this ease of access does for you, right?
Yep, exactly. And when it comes to building AI models, right, we have the same interruption that can happen. And it doesn't happen necessarily to us, it happens to our AI during training.
Right.
So we guarantee the source to target match.
Right.
We're guaranteeing the most up-to-date data.
Right.
And we're even introducing more tooling for our validation. On the back end, we do data validation.
All right.
It's not presented in our AI. Our organization last week, we just did the all hands that we talked about. We previewed what it's going to look like for folks to be able to go in and see, ooh, this table was data validated on this date with these hash keys, with this many rows confirmed. And if there's ever any discrepancy, it says, oh, there's a discrepancy, we automatically resolved it. Today, that just happens behind the scenes. People don't ask about it.
All right.
Because we're doing data validation as part of our normal model. But being able to show that off and give people that comfort of mind before they run before they go out and run this, what it's going to take 20 hours, 30 hours modeling, adding on, whatever it's going to be.
Right.
know for sure your data's there.
Yeah.
So that's the next level of comfort.
Well, and maybe let's focus on trust as the last big pillar of success in business. When people trust their data, they use their data. If they don't trust the data, if they don't trust the system, if they don't trust the pipeline, if they don't trust the environment, they're just going to go a different direction.
Yeah.
You know, I heard this wise man say years and years ago on a different subject, but it applies here. He said, look, when people don't want to deal with something, they just don't deal. Right? It's sort of tautological in nature, but you understand, like if there's too many friction points, and that's what lowers morale, is friction points that are not being resolved. People understand, okay, there's a problem. As long as there's a plan to get through that problem, I'm okay with it.
Yes.
But if there's no plan and you keep getting pushed back, that's like, am I right? It's like, no bueno.
1,000%. And
right?
I've been, I mean, as a vendor, like I get in that conversation all the time, where we go in and folks are like say, we just need an answer to this challenge. And we come in and they say, okay, well, it could be Fivetran or, it could be other tools, but I could tell that the feeling in the room, people are elated just to have the conversation, knowing that their management, that their direction of the company has said, we're going to tackle this.
Right.
And to come into that is exactly that feeling.
Well, and you're really greasing the tracks for the business people, and they're the ones who are on the front lines who know what they need to do their job better. And the old days of like throwing stuff over the wall to IT, that's history, man. That's ancient history. If that's your organization now, you are not going to make it to the AI age, right?
You're right. We have to be embedded.
Right.
So we have conversations constantly saying, hey, what are we actually doing with this? We come in as Fivetran, hey, is there a problem, right? Do you guys feel comfortable with it? Sometimes the IT team says, oh yeah, things are running great, pipelines are fine. We talk to the business and they say, what are you talking about? It's broken 3 times a week and my data's wrong. And we're like, all right, well, these are different stories.
Oh,
so it has to be a conversation. It has to be an organizational collaboration.
Right. Well, and it's all centralized. Well, closing thoughts from you. I think you talked a little bit about what's coming next, but final bit of advice to our audience about how to supercharge their environment and get the ship sailing.
I can't say it more than enough, but we don't all need to go figure out how to pull from Salesforce. Not everyone needs to figure out how to do that. There's one way to do it. The API is already written. Come to Fivetran and let us do it for you.
Nice.
We've got it figured out. We do it right. Any of your data sets, any of your data sources, let Fivetran do it for you.
And that is the hardest one out there, the hardest nut to crack. Salesforce and SAP are probably the 2 hardest ones to crack.
There are 2 favorite to crack.
And there are so many gems hidden in that environment, so you've got to pull them out, unearth them, and then you can share it with your business and do some fun things.
100%, Eric.
Well, look this gentleman up online, Josiah Vincent from Fivetran. We'll talk to you next time. You've been listening to Inside Analysis.